Welcome to Vega on Air. Tell us a bit about your childhood and what are the incidents that you remember which perhaps made you realize your calling?
Well, the first memory I have is in kindergarten. I was in Lahore. It was 1947, just before the partition. And I came home waving a report card. And my mother asked me, "Did you stand first?" And my father was just behind her. And he said to her, that was the wrong question. He said, ask him what he likes about school. What does he like to draw? Does he like stories? Who are his friends? Those are the things that you should be asking. My mother, with her middle class insecurities, wanted to make sure I'd grow up to make a living. My father, on the other hand, was more relaxed, and he kept reminding me to make a life. So this making a living and making a life was the common refrain right through my life. When I was 16 and I had the good fortune to get into Harvard, and I got a scholarship to go to Harvard to do undergraduate. I remember my mother at Palam Airport. She had tears in her eyes when she was saying goodbye. She said, make sure you study something useful. You have to come back home and get a job. I read the catalog of courses and I fell in love. I forgot my mother's instruction completely, and I discovered, I read Greek tragedy, the Russian novel, Sanskrit love poetry, and so I started taking courses in economics. I took courses in architecture, Renaissance painting, Beethoven. I mean, I went crazy. And luckily, the American undergraduate system allows you to do all this. And so I got my degree in philosophy, and then I got a scholarship to go to Oxford to do a PhD. And at the last minute, I asked myself, did I want to spend the rest of my life at that stratosphere of abstract thought? No. I said I wanted a life of action. And I refused the scholarship. And I didn't go. So my mother's worst nightmare got fulfilled. She had an unemployed son at home. And she had a nosy neighbor who kept asking her every day, "Thoda munda ki kar raha hai?" And she'd get so embarrassed every day because I wasn't doing anything. And so to assuage her from her guilt, I answered the first advertisement in the newspaper that I found. It was a company that wanted trainees. The company made Vicks Vapor Rub. I applied for it and I got in. I think they got impressed with my Harvard degree. But suddenly I found from the ivy-covered halls of Harvard with high philosophy, I was walking in the dusty bazaars of India, going from shop to shop, selling Vicks Vapor Rub.
Wow.
A Monday to Friday hat was my Vicks hat, and Saturday, Sunday hat, I decided, was my reading and writing hat. And so I wrote my first play.
At 22?
At 22.
Fantastic.
And I was lucky. It won a big prize, and it got produced by theatre group, Alec Padamsee and all those chaps in Bombay. It got published by Oxford University Press. It was performed at the Edinburgh Festival. So I got the confidence to write a second play. And that by then, my company had it was an American multinational. They transferred me to New York. So I continued my routine, and I wrote a second play on Mirabai, the Rajput saint, princess, poet. That's how I got started. I wrote another play, Jakhu Hill, 9 Jakhu Hill, which was performed here, and Yatrik did it, and they had a record number of performances. Anyway, then I wrote a novel in my 30s. So while I wore 2 hats, Monday to Friday hat and Saturday, Sunday hat. By 37, I was at the head of the company. That company became Procter and Gamble India. And one day in my late 40s, I asked myself, is this what life is all about? And it was a moment of crisis, and I quit the corporate world to become a writer. And the reason I went to become a writer is because by then I had the confidence. I had published a novel, I had published my plays, they had been performed. So, in other words, I think the point I'm making is there's no one calling for one person. You actually create it, you create it. You don't find yourself, you create yourself. And in my case, I created myself by taking my hobby seriously, as seriously as my job. Most people sleepwalk through life. I was very lucky to have a father who told me the difference between making a life. And all those years at Harvard, when I was flitting from philosophy to literature, to history, to economics, I was making a life. And I wouldn't have been writing the books that I write today if it weren't for that preparation in making a life. So books are very important.
If we imagine a system where educators are facilitators, where educational institutes are little cocoons which nurture talent, then what would be your 3 tips for an educational institute to do to let children find their inner star?
You have to let the child remain in the person. You know the difference between a child and an adult. It's raining outside and all the adults are carrying umbrellas and there's a puddle on the street and the adults will go around the puddle with their umbrellas and their raincoats. What does the child do? He'll go and jump into the puddle, dirty his clothes. But that's what a child is. So that childish curiosity should be nurtured in the child. Child has enormous capacity. Ask questions. When I wrote the book Difficulty of Being Good, what did I do? I interrogated the Mahabharata. I wanted to see how the Mahabharata was relevant to our lives today. So I questioned every page. And so that questioning, the interrogation, you don't read a book, you interrogate a book. And that would be the second tip. The third tip, I suppose, is to take a bit of risk in life, which is what I did. I mean, I gave up. If I had not taken a risk, I would never have read the literature and the stuff that I did. I jumped into the puddle, in other words.
So this debate which goes on between 2 education systems, one that has been going on in India, which relies on rote memory, relies on discipline, persistence, hard work, and the other which says that let children be. So where lies the balance?
Yeah. So there's some, you mentioned qualities which you put them into 2 buckets. And actually, I think you put some in the wrong bucket. Because a creative person, has to have discipline. Working like that, when you're not aware, it's an art of self-forgetting. When you're not aware, you are, athletes call it, in the zone.
In the zone.
Tendulkar was asked, that famous double century that he hit in the end.
Yes.
And as he was approaching it, the reporter, after he had done it, asked him, how did it feel like to go to when you're close to it? And he said, I said, I don't know. I wasn't even there. The ball had become so big and the bat had become so big that the bat just had to hit the ball.
Very well put. Thank you so much for these insights. I'm sure the children and the parents and the faculty will have a lot to mull over after listening to your interview. Thank you. Thank you.